Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. I don't know if this is a breaking news update, but it's certainly happening recently today. And a few things are coming together to make me think that Putin might be feeling the pressure a little bit. There are some really good signs economically speaking. We're going to be talking about oil tankers to start with, and then we're going to come on to have a little discussion about how Putin is feeling just at the moment. So let's go on. Okay, we'll start with Bloomberg reporting that the sanctioned oil tanker Furia, carrying 730,000 barrels of crude oil in India, has rerouted and is now anchored in the Baltic Sea, possibly signaling the buyer's refusal amid US sanctions on oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil. So this is all really good news for Ukraine. It's looking like the American administration, the Trump administration, has done what we have wanted it to do, and it is for ages, right, since January the 20th, and it is having the desired effect. So Bloomberg has written this article. We'll just dip into this. So an India-bound tanker carrying Russian crude oil does a U-turn in the Baltic Sea. So this is a sign of potential disruption to oil trade between the two countries after the US tightened sanctions on Moscow. The Furia was moving westward in the strait between Denmark and Germany when it turned around on Tuesday and sailed for a short distance before slowing down drastically, ship tracking data showed. The Aframax is carrying a cargo sold by Rosneft PJSC, according to Kepler. The vessel's U-turn in the Fehmarn Belt occurred a week after the US slapped sanctions on state-owned Rosneft and fellow Russian oil giant Lukoil PJSC. Transactions involving the two companies must be wound down by November the 21st, the Treasury Department has said. The blacklisting of Russia's largest producers threatens to cut off a relatively cheap source of crude oil for Indian refiners. Senior executives at Indian processors have told Bloomberg that flows of Russian oil are expected to plunge as a result. The Furia lifted nearly 730,000 barrels of Urals crude from Russia's Baltic port of Primorsk on October the 20th. Data from ship tracking platforms Kepler and Vortexa show. The vessel initially displayed Sikar, a port in the Indian state of Gujarat, used by private refiner Reliance Industries Limited and state-backed Bharat Petroleum Corp Limited as its next destination, with an expected arrival date of mid-November. It later changed its schedule to indicate arrival in Egypt's Port Said in the middle of the next month. Vessels that traverse the Suez Canal, the quickest route between Russia's western ports and India, sometimes signal Port Said as a destination before adjusting to their final destination after passing through the waterway. Reliance, which has a long-term contract to buy Urals from Rosneft, has said it is committed to complying with sanctions and was seen scooping up Middle Eastern crude after the US imported its latest trade measures. Indian state refiners have also turned cautious on buying cargoes from US-sanctioned Russian producers. Indian refiners often buy crude oil on a delivered basis, meaning they assume ownership only when the cargoes are discharged at the destination port. Reliance and BPCL did not immediately respond to requests for comment. It's interesting to note, and this is me speaking, that Reliance also do business with America. So actually the US is putting lots of pressure on many countries not to buy refined Russian oil products from, well, to buy Russian crude and then turn it into refined products and, you know, and then sell that on. Well, actually, the US is one of the purchasers of such product. So it finishes at the same time. Some European nations, including Denmark, have been stepping up checks on tankers in order to halt vessels carrying Russian crude oil passing through their waters. Denmark said this month it will target older ships, which are often used by Russia's so-called shadow fleet, and that's because they're targeting them not so much on the sanctions themselves, but on health and safety and environmental regulations that they will inevitably fail over. Okay. So then we hear that India's HMEL, this is the Economic Times, reporting the HMEL energy company has decided to suspend further purchases of Russian oil due to the latest sanctions. I think that's the Economic Times of India reporting that. Again, another sign that things are difficult. And all the other indicators that I've been talking about, I reported this morning on that there are Central Bank of Russia predictions going forward into 2027, economic predictions, and one of them is that 2026 could well see the end of the sovereign wealth fund. It could be exhausted by the end of next year. That would be an absolute disaster for the Russians. Things are looking economically precarious, and this is absolutely fantastic for Ukraine. As I've said many times, the Ukrainians prevailing militarily is contingent upon an economic collapse, in my opinion, and that is looking more and more likely with pressure from the US. It's just frustrating that it's happened all too late in the day. And of course, remember that Ukraine is putting its own sanctions on. So these are still happening on almost a nightly basis. Last night, there were 2, albeit smaller, oil depots that were hit. In fact, it says Simferopol combined heat and power plant. Actually, I think it was an oil depot next to Simferopol. So actually, 2 oil depots, arguably, and 2 refineries. 2 oil depots in Crimea, one at Fradiska, which was hit on the 17th, I think. Second time that's been hit. And then an oil depot in Simferopol. Then we have the NS oil refinery in Ulyanovsk, I think it is, and the Mariskoye refinery as well hit, and other things like substations and chemical plants and whatnot. But in terms of oil extraction, refining, storage, transportation, selling, Russia are under increasing pressure, and the pressure is mounting on a daily basis. It is not getting better, and it won't get better. And I think it's very interesting that now we hear that Viktor Orban is going to meet Donald Trump on the 8th of November. I'm not quite sure where that is, probably Washington. So Viktor Orban is going to go and meet Trump. Obviously, he's desperate for exemptions, but hopefully Trump will remain quite steadfast in his approach to these sanctions. Trump is meeting with Xi Jinping, and that's going to be a very, very meaningful, arguably an incredibly important meeting that could decide an awful lot going forward concerning the war in Ukraine. And talking about these Ukrainian sanctions, if you like, scare quote sanctions, military, drone and missile sanctions. This is what the fire at the Simferopol oil depot. So this is one that thought to be initially the power plant, is actually the oil depot. And these are very big red triangles, squares, all put together here to suggest that there's quite a lot of fire going on at the oil depot. That's what it looks like from space, as the firm's data shows the heat signatures very powerfully illuminating an entire neighborhood of the suburban village of Komsomolska, where the TES gas station chain's oil depot is located. That is Ukraine's way of imposing their own sanctions. And then there are other associated industries that are struggling. Aeroflot will repair Boeing and Airbus aircraft engines themselves. Wow. So don't fly, as Prune here says, Prune 60 says, do not fly on a Russian airline. Aeroflot will repair Boeing and Airbus aircraft engines itself, as the sanctions are biting, and it means they can't get the spare parts. They can't repair these Western planes or imported planes very easily. So Aeroflot are going to take that on. Goodness me, it's probably pretty desperate in the Russian aviation industry. Interesting that an Indian entity has said that they are going to go into business with the Russians to make one of the Russian aviation, civil aviation planes. Is it the SJ-100? I don't know how controversial that is, considering, this is a sanctioned industry, and India are also already, treading a fine line with regard to oil sanctions and whatnot. But anyway, just there are these canaries in the coal mine for the Russian economy that, as I say, none of them are getting better. So then we come to Putin himself. So the other day, Putin flew well, not he himself, but the Russians flew a missile 14,000 kilometers and were shouting about how it was a nuclear capable missile. So this is saber rattling. And then just a mere couple of days later, we hear today that Putin has said that Russia's tested a Poseidon nuclear-powered autonomous torpedo. By the way, I think they said it was a nuclear-powered missile. I don't know. There were Norwegian analyses that stated that there was no extra radiation readings in the area that the missile was used. So I don't know how much we can take as of what the Russians claim as being true. Nonetheless, they are definitely saber-rattling. That's what they're trying to do. And this is almost certainly in response to the sanctions biting. They need to show that they are powerful, and they need to scare, well, particularly probably an audience of one, Donald Trump, who is already quite vulnerable to nuclear saber-rattling and ideas of nuclear holocaust. So Putin has said that Russia has tested a Poseidon nuclear-powered autonomous torpedo. Quote, Poseidon's power significantly exceeds that of even our most promising Sarmat intercontinental range missile. There's nothing like that, the Sarmat, in the world, he said. Russia's saber-rattling has intensified recently, says Anton Gerashenko. Really, really important. Oh, Vigo commenting below that. Now, it's worth also seeing, if I look on my Blue Sky feed, there's an awful lot of talk going on today about these Sarmat missile launches and saber-rattles. Here you got some more. In Putin in 2023, this year, the first launches of the Sarmat missile system equipped with a new heavy missile are entering combat duty. Putin in 2025, the Sarmat intercontinental range missile will soon enter combat duty. So what's going on here is, and actually that's probably a good place to end this as to what Putin is doing here. So it's clear that he has not got a lot left in the tank as far as trying to get the US to change direction, to lift sanctions. Like, short of using nuclear missiles, all he can do is saber-rattle the usage of these. So he's saying, look, we've got a 14,000 kilometer missile that we just sent across, and that's nuclear capable, nuclear powered, or whatever. Here's a Poseidon nuclear powered torpedo missile thing. And hey, the Sarmat missile system is going to be combat ready soon. Well, you said that a couple of years ago. So really, why are you saying that now? You're just reminding people, actually, you're no more capable than you were. And you're just shouting about stuff because you're flailing. You're desperate. You're in a really desperate situation. And that means you are saying, we are still strong, though. Like, we're still really powerful. Honest, we are. And if you keep these sanctions on, I'm not going to say that explicitly. I'm not going to link these two things explicitly, but you put sanctions on, and look, we've got a really big missile that we sent in the air. And look, we got a really powerful Poseidon missile torpedo thing. And look at how powerful we are. We are not a paper bear. We're not a paper tiger, as you have said, so on and so forth. So I think this kind of behavior with regard to the missiles and the talk about the Sarmat intercontinental range missile system is precisely because Russia is in trouble. They are desperate, and that is all they have. I've said this to you previously, that Russia are operating at their maximal amount. So when you see a night of 136 drones and missiles sent, and then the next night of 47, and then the next night of 112, and then the next night of 84, right? That's the most that they can send. I'm guessing, this is my speculation, of course, so take it with a pinch of salt, but I'm guessing that what the Russians are doing at the moment with regard to the war in Ukraine and with regard to hitting Ukraine is they are doing the maximum they can, whilst also having to have at least something in reserve in case they get engaged with NATO directly, and without using overtly chemical weapons, asterisks, and without using nuclear weapons. Okay, if you going to take those away, they're doing everything they can. I don't think Russia has any more capacity. So whatever they're doing on any given night is the most that they can do. So then when it comes to the West ramping up something, in this case, economic sanctions through the United States, Russia doesn't have anything it can do back. It can't just say, right, you've done that, now we're going to do this. All it can do is saber-rattle those two things, either chemical weapons, well, they're not going to do that, or nuclear weapons, or long-range missiles and whatnot. That's what they're doing, because that's all that they can do. And that shows, I think, how weak Russia is. More sanctions, please. Secondary sanctions, please. Let's go to town on the Russians. Come on, Trump. You can do it. Hey, I'll even say you're a hero if you do. I mean, through gritted teeth, and I won't really mean it. But please do it. Anyway, that's enough for me. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. No more output from me today. I'm going for a curry and a pint.